Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world. However, for most of its ancient history, the archipelago got its culture from India. Spectacular shrines and temples were constructed to worship Hindu gods and practice Buddhism. Hindu Majapahit, based in East Java, was the most powerful empire in the history of Southeast Asia. Now, since my first visit to Indonesia in 1993, I've been fascinated with Javanese antiquities like Borobudur and Gedong Songo. While most Javanese antiquities follow a similar pattern, two temples at the foot of Gunung Lawu break that pattern. Unlike the usual Hindu or Buddhist temples, these two temples stand out by virtue of their crude or even vulgar sexual themes. How did these two iconoclastic structures turn out this way? The year was 1389. Tears poured out of the eyes of 9-year-old Princess Suhita. It was her grandfather's funeral, and she was distraught. Her grandfather had been doting on her since she was a baby. To her great alarm, more people close to her would soon meet their end. It was the grand funeral of the greatest ruler of the Majapahit Empire, Hayam Wuruk. What the little princess saw that day would scar her for life. As the funeral pyre was lit and the flames rose, women who had looked after her since she was a baby walked calmly into the fire, dressed in ceremonial white gowns. She was shocked beyond words or tears. The flames swallowed the silent women. The smell of burning hair and flesh haunted her for the rest of her life. Unlike most Asian dynasties, and despite practicing widow burning, the Hindu Empire of Majapahit had several queens who were the ultimate authority of the land. Civil war plagued the empire after the death of Hayam Wuruk, its most powerful ruler. Princess Suhita's mother, Queen Kusama Wardana, and her husband, Prince Wikrama Wardani, fought against her uncle, Prince Wirabumi, for their share of Majapahit territory. Infighting led to the breakup of the empire. When Governor Parameswara of Temasek tried to establish diplomatic ties with China without going through Majapahit, Wikrama Wardani invaded. Parameswara abandoned Temasek and fled to peninsular Malaya, where he converted to Islam and changed his name to Iskandar Shah. After her uncle and her brother were killed in the long-drawn civil war, Princess Suhita's parents abdicated in 1400 and made her Queen Suhita of Majapahit, which was by then in swift decline as vassals started ignoring orders from the former nerve center. That same year, Parameswara, also known as Iskandar Shah, established the Malacca Sultanate, which conveniently pulled traffic away from the Majapahit port of Tuban, west of today's Surabaya. Queen Suhita was a capable woman, but she inherited a mess from her parents. She first sought to clean up the port businesses, rooting out corruption and profiteering. She valued discipline and honesty, things which she saw in the growing Muslim community that prayed 5 times a day and seldom got drunk. She readily granted them permission to build mosques. When Hindu priests protested, the queen designed and ordered the construction of 2 Hindu temples. The priests were temporarily appeased, but when they approached the 2 temples under construction, they were shocked. Suhita's temples were full of phallic and yoni symbols taken from tantric texts. She employed female designers to supervise the stonemasons, saying that women have better ideas about what is erotic. The temples had little to do with Hinduism. In fact, it was a deliberate affront to conventional Hindu rituals, which she abhorred. Being childless, she materialized her hidden obsession with monuments that would adorn fertility shrines. Ironically, Suhita's progressive and enlightened views would pave the way for the fall of Majapahit. Her successors completed the construction of her temples after her death in 1450. But the imperial court descended into chaos as her brother Kertawijaya sat on the throne for only 4 years before he died. His sons, Suhita's nephews, fought among themselves until King Prajiwa prevailed. By then, Majapahit's once powerful navy was in shambles and they had little left to trade with China. When the Portuguese arrived, they discovered what a great and technologically advanced empire Majapahit used to be. Majapahit mariners have mapped the oceans more accurately than the Europeans did. The Portuguese had stumbled upon a maritime empire which once ruled Java, Sumatra, Malaya, Borneo, Bali, Lombok, Sumbawa, and beyond. However, after some surveying, the Portuguese decided that Malacca was more strategic and worthy of their occupation. Trading in Majapahit ports declined further. The 16th century saw a rapid growth in the Muslim population of Java. These pious and disciplined folks, which Queen Suhita once admired, started getting intolerant towards the infidels. From the headquarters in Demak, which prospered with the arrival of Arab traders, they staged a jihad against Majapahit. That would be the final nail on Majapahit's coffin. The once great empire was obliterated, the temples destroyed, and the palace burned to the ground in 1527. Now let's take a look at Queen Suhita's legacy, 2 enigmatic temples with an erotic theme. Located on the often misty western slope of Gunung Lawu, at a site 910 meters above sea level, lies the ruins of a mysterious and somewhat bizarre Hindu temple, Candi Suku. The date of its construction has been estimated to be around 1437. It was a time when the formerly glorious Hindu empire was fading away. As Majapahit burned to the ground and Islam reigned over its ashes, Candi Suku got scavenged and abandoned after 1527. It was not till 1815 that Candi Suku was rediscovered by a British resident by the name of Johnson. The discovery was reported to Java's Lieutenant Governor T.S. Raffles, who ordered its restoration. Bearing a curious resemblance to Mayan cultural sites in Mexico and Inca cultural sites in Peru, Candi Suku has little in common with the Hindu shrines in other parts of Indonesia. Another striking difference is the direction of Candi Suku. Extremely unusual for a temple that worships Lord Shiva, it faces the west instead of the east, so the best time for photos is in the late afternoon. Going against traditional style and design was a deliberate act of defiance against Hindu norms on the part of Queen Suhita. What's truly intriguing about Candi Suku is its sexual theme. While it is common for phallic symbols to appear in Shiva temples in India, the depiction is usually discreet. Candi Suku is explicit, if not downright vulgar. In fact, there was once a phallic statue 1.8 meters high on this site. It has been removed and housed in a museum in Jakarta. Queen Suhita had not lived to see the temples she designed completed. Why did her successors complete it for her? Did they share her rebellious streak against Hindu practices, or did they see some other purpose in completing the project she started to improve Majapahit fertility rates? Structure and relief of Candi Suku. The temple complex, covering an area of 5,500 square meters, is surrounded by the typical greenery of lower tropical highlands. The entire temple complex in its restored form has 3 levels of terraces. The original temple could have had more. The first terrace of Candi Suku is recognized by the main gate. It sits on a mound, so there could have been more terraces below it. The blue gate you see at the top was built after its restoration to protect an image on the floor. Carved out of stone on the floor is an image of a lingam and a yoni on the verge of penetration. This explicit display gives the visitor a most impactful introduction to the theme on which Candi Suku was built. According to one legend, insecure Javanese men who had been away from home used to force their wives to jump over the image. If her sarong fell off, it meant that she had not been faithful. Apparently, even Muslim men dragged their suspected wives here. Did Majapahit kings hope that Muslims would like this temple enough to forget that it belonged to infidels? Of course, this fidelity test is not practiced today anymore. Otherwise, someone would be getting rich at the entrance selling safety pins. Anyone who is familiar with Javanese antiquities would quickly notice that these carvings and sculptures are like kindergarten drawings compared to the highly sophisticated and detailed artwork at Prambanan and Borobudur. The obvious explanation is that the Majapahit Rajas at that time were rapidly losing their master craftsmen, as Islam forbids the worship of devas. To enter the temple today, you need to wear a sarong to show respect for Hinduism. Ironically, Queen Suhita built it to mock the Hindu priests. The next temple is Candi Cheto, located at the foot of Gunung Lau. I arrived here after climbing Gunung Lau. At the base camp in this direction are some recently constructed Balinese-style gateways and bathing pools. About 12 kilometers away, on the other side of the mountain, is Candi Cheto, a Hindu yet not quite Hindu temple that was built at about the same time in the late Majapahit era, 15th century AD. The location of the temple is on the slope of Gunung Lau at an altitude of 1,496 meters above sea level. The temple complex is used by local residents as well as Hindu pilgrims as a place of worship. The first rediscovery of the temple was made by Dutch explorer Van de Vliet in 1842. Excavation and reconstruction only commenced in 1928, undertaken by the Archaeological Office of the Dutch East Indies. Dutch artist A.J. Burnett Campus also conducted some research on the ruins towards the middle of the 20th century. The original temple had 14 ascending terraces, extending from the lowest in the west to the highest in the east. Only 9 terraces could be reconstructed with the pieces found. The bulk of the restoration took place in the late 1970s without any in-depth research by Major General Sujono Humadani. This general's work has been much criticized by archaeologists, as a lot of it involved imagination rather than archaeological discovery. New structures added to the restorations included the Balinese gateways, wooden buildings around the hermitage, various statues, the massive phallus, and the cubic building near the top of the Candi. Inscriptions indicate that the temple was built in stages. Some parts were dated 1475. There is a horizontal stone setting on the ground that depicts a giant turtle and a 2-meter-long phallus symbol. Turtles are a symbol of the creation of the universe, while the phallus is a symbol of human creation. There are depictions of other animals such as frogs and crabs dated 1451. At the 6th level, there are reliefs that show the Sudamala story similar to that found at Candi Suku. At the 7th level are 2 statues representing the spiritual advisors of King Brawijaya, the last ruler of Majapahit Empire. On the 8th level, there is a statue of the phallus in the north and a statue of King Brawijaya in the form of a god. The 9th level is the highest level for prayers. Now, if you wish to visit these 2 very interesting temples, Candi Cheto, Candi Suku, the most convenient place to base yourself would be at this highland resort of Tawang Manggu. Now, Tawang Manggu is about the same altitude as Genting, but it's considerably colder. So make sure you bring your warm clothing if you spend the night there. From Tawang Manggu, you could go down to the marketplace, and then after that, just charter one of those mini buses. As for access to Tawang Manggu, the nearest city with an airport would be Solo or Surakarta. So from Jakarta, you can get a flight to Solo, and then from Solo, you can get a taxi going up to Tawang Manggu. Not very convenient, but then these 2 temples are really worth visiting. See you there.